Hello, everyone. Thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. I'm wearing a Quest 3, and David here is in the Quest 3S, and we appear here today as last generation meta avatars in a VR studio built by David. It is November 7th, 2024. We're using hand tracking and the built in microphones today. We've got tablets in front of us to see live comments from our YouTube audience during the broadcast. And neither David nor I are feeling super well, so this will likely be a shorter episode. I'd like to send a sincere thank you to our members and patrons for directly supporting the work we do here. In particular, thank you to Mike Manzano, HoloNet, Podum, that's developer Smash Drums, XR, Developer News. David, what do we have today?
Hello, everyone. So, yes, as Ian mentioned, we're not feeling quite well. I'm actually feeling worse than last week. So, apologies if we get a little bit muddled up at points here, but we still wanted to keep this show going. So, we're going to have three sections today. We will first talk about PlayStation 5 Pro and its significance for PlayStation VR 2. We'll then have a meta section, and then we'll have an Apple section. Within that middle section, the meta section, we will talk about Horizon OS version 71, which is a massive update bringing a plethora of new features and improvements, and we'll dig into all of those when we discuss it. We will also discuss Live getting support for capturing standalone on Quest. So when developers implement the new Live Creator SDK, they will allow you to have an interface in the game that allows you to record in third person and wide field of view stabilized first person. And Gorilla Tag has announced that they are going to support it within Gorilla Tag. In our Apple section, we will talk about the Belkin made top strap for Vision Pro that Apple now sells. So it's for the solo knit band. You get a side to side top strap. We will talk about visionOS 2.2 beta, which brings the long-awaited wide and ultra-wide Mac virtual display modes to Apple Vision Pro. We will talk about the report that Apple is now seriously exploring releasing smart glasses in 2027. So that would be a Ray-Ban Meta Glasses competitor coming 3 years from now. And we will finish by discussing the bombshell report from the supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, claiming that the cheaper Apple Vision headset that we had expected to launch next year in 2025 has been delayed beyond 2027. So if true, and that is an if, that would be very significant for the Apple Vision headset line, Vision OS, and this entire industry in general.
I want to say hi to Quentin out there. Hello to Sweden. Let's see, we've got Utah as well. Geek Godin in our comments, Recycled, Biggs, Q Creator, Onakaze, everyone out there, thank you all for tuning in. Wanted to make a quick personal comment before we get into that first subject. I put it in my notes here. But I wanted to make just a little statement here on the subject of empathy. I don't believe social media as it exists today encourages empathy, and yet I see a fair amount of empathy in the audience of our shows. So thank you for that, and I'll begin by quoting Roger Ebert. We are all born with a certain package. We are who we are, where we are born, who we were born as, how we were raised. We're kind of stuck inside that person, and the purpose of civilization and growth is to be able to reach out and empathize a little bit with other people. And for me, the movies are like a machine that generates empathy. It lets you understand a little bit more about different hopes, aspirations, dreams, and fears. It helps us to identify with the people who are sharing this journey with us. One of the most impactful VR experiences I have ever tried was a simple project produced with stiff and awkward animations in the most basic of environments, but it was made from audio captured by a gay individual who was being kicked out of their religious household because who they were was viewed as a choice by the people they called family. And in that moment, standing in that living room with a person on the verge of being sent into homelessness, I saw from another perspective and understood how love turns to hate in the blink of an eye. So take care of yourselves out there. Take care to find out how you can empathize with others rather than simply disagreeing with them. David, let's talk about PS5 Pro.
Sure. So it's out today. We talked about it when it was announced that very controversial price point of $700. If you're not familiar, it's just a higher end version of PlayStation 5. It's not PlayStation 6. It's just for enthusiasts who want, better graphics, better performance in the titles that they care about. So it has a 2 terabyte SSD, twice the storage, a 45% more powerful GPU with 2 to 3 times faster ray tracing, 2 gigabytes more RAM, of which around 1.3 is available to games, and PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, PSSR, which is a neural upscaling technology that is similar to what you would see in DLSS on NVIDIA cards on PC. So that PSSR feature is not available for VR at launch. It does not support virtual reality at launch, though Sony have confirmed that it will arrive in a future firmware update. So for now, developers who have PlayStation VR 2 games have the option to just use the raw increased power of the GPU to deliver enhancement patches that give you either slightly better graphics or slightly better performance, by say going from 60 FPS mode to 90. None have done the latter yet. Right now, we only have a few virtual reality titles that have actually got PS5 Pro enhancement patches, and those include No Man's Sky, Kayak VR Mirage, and Sayub VR, which is kind of a Minecraft clone. So in that Minecraft clone's case, they've just increased the LOD, the level of detail, as you get further away from objects. So you'll see them turning into like low detail versions at a longer distance now. For Kayak VR Mirage, they've increased the dynamic resolution and they've added 8K textures. And in No Man's Sky, they've done a bunch of graphical enhancements as well as bringing up the dynamic resolution again. So it's very much a resolution thing for now. Arcanage is going to have a PS5 Pro patch when it's available for a 15 to 25% resolution boost. And in Subside's case, they haven't given any specifics, but they haven't confirmed that they will have it enhanced. So off the bat, it's disappointing to see that none of the major Sony first and second party titles have this, right? As far as we know, there is no Horizon Call of the Mountain patch. There is no Resident Evil patch, and there is no patch for the other major PlayStation VR.
Gran Turismo, they're asking about Gran Turismo in the comments.
Yeah, we don't have any confirmation that PlayStation VR 2 is included in the Gran Turismo 7 PS5 Pro patch, but we're going to look into that and find out if it is. They haven't announced it, right? So they either don't care enough to announce it or they just haven't done it at all. I really think that if you're a PlayStation VR 2 user and that's why you care about your PlayStation 5, this is probably not going to be a very meaningful upgrade until PSSR is out, because from what we understand from an interview that Sony gave to CNET a month or two ago, that will work across the board. So you'll kind of get this automatic sharpening, neural sharpening in every virtual reality game, according to that CNET interview. So we will keep a close eye on that, and I plan to get one at some point. So when they do release that firmware update that supports virtual reality and PSSR, that's when we will make our assessment of, is this worth an upgrade? Right now, if you're only caring about VR, you don't really care about the flat screen stuff, you can go into other channels to talk about the flat screen stuff. This is not worth $700.
Yeah, we will be on top of that. David did some really great work to compile this list for our team and get that out for you of what's the known confirmed updates. We'll likely see those updates roll out over time, right?
Yeah, and just to be clear, that was Henry that did that list.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, very good team effort there. I saw the emails flying back and forth on it. Yeah, so Henry put that together, and sorry about that. Yeah, but we'll see those updates roll out over time, and hopefully we'll see some of those core titles get some of the support. I've seen people saying Sony doesn't really care about PSVR 2. That's a common refrain we've seen in our comments. It's sort of it's becoming the general feeling, but I don't know. We're going to have to see what the last few years of this platform looks like, right? There's a transition happening towards standalone. It's unavoidable at this point. Like it's the theme of our conversation going back years, David. Like you saw David and I argue back and forth for years about what Sony's long-term strategy here. And a lot of that argument I'm going to maintain was just about us disagreeing about the timing situation. Was Sony aggressive enough in getting ready for standalone VR or not? And I think the writing is on the wall here that maybe they weren't aggressive enough in getting to standalone VR.
I still don't think that they needed standalone. I think the problem with doing standalone is then you have to have this entirely separate PlayStation store with, ported titles and that run on a different OS realistically. It would make more sense for me that they would have wireless. I do think it was a huge miss to not have wireless. I think people who bought into VR when it was still wired are by definition the people who don't care that it's wired. But there is this huge market of people who, back in the day when there wasn't wireless available, they said, I'm not interested in this until it's wireless. And a lot of those people, millions of them, bought in the Quest 2 era when there was this headset that, if they're a PC gamer, they can use that with Virtual Desktop and AirLink and now Steam Link wirelessly. And I do think it was a huge miss that you have this thing that's meant to sort of fit into your living room and could take advantage of these large spaces, but it just, people don't want wired. I don't think they want it. I think Mark Zuckerberg was right when he was originally asked just before PlayStation VR 2 launched, you have Sony, this giant company with its PlayStation brand coming into VR gaming. Are you worried that it's going to take a huge chunk out of Quest? And he said, I just don't think consumers are going to go for wireless for wired VR anymore. And I think that's proven out.
Yeah, there's of course the in-between solution here where it's a tethered puck in your pocket or on your body to keep the battery going all day. The solution that Apple Vision Pro, but
sure, but you're not going to get the PlayStation 5 performance out of that, right? Like, look at the size of this thing. Where is this going to go in your body? This is the puck, right? This is the external computing unit. It's this size, right? And you can talk about the base PS5. Yeah, it's a little bit smaller. Maybe if they absolutely were optimizing for size, they could make it 30% smaller, but this is not going to fit in your pocket, right? This is what it looks like to get this level of fidelity of graphics. It's either that PC that's sitting in the corner of your desk, this giant big box, or it's this one that's sitting under your living room. There's no magic solution that puts this level of performance into your pocket.
Absolutely. So let's move on to our next subject, unless there's any comments you want to call out there before we move on, David.
Yeah, I'm just curious of what Onakazi was referring to when they said a latest article mentioned making the reprojection being at 120 versus 60. Is that in reference to a specific PSVR 2 game, or what is it you're referring to there? Please let us know as soon as possible.
So this next subject is Horizon OS v71. We had the last show with Gamescast where Don was on v71 and I was on v69. What version are you on, David, today?
v69 on this headset and v71 on my Quest 3.
It would be funny to have him switch into the Quest 3 Live and see if his avatar disappears, because that was the bug that we encountered on the Gamescast where Don's avatar didn't load, and so he looked like an empty shell of an avatar here in the studio. Could have been any number of things, but this is a massive, massive update and a lot of things changing. Let's get those all from David here, who follows this so closely.
Yeah, so the first thing I would note about some people who may think they're on v71 proper is that if you're on the public test channel, then you may not be. You may be on v71 PTC, and it is quite confusing, and they probably should do better at communicating this and putting maybe some sort of label on your Quest bar or your settings interface to show the difference. But in order, it'll be v69, then v71 PTC, then v71 proper. And the update we're talking about today is v71 proper, because that public test channel version brings some of the features that will be in the proper version, but not all of them. That in itself is quite confusing, right? It's presumably if you want to test these features, you want to put them on the public test channel. But Meta is quite unique in how it does its updates. We really don't see another consumer electronics company acting like this. And one of the really bizarre things that we've noticed, or strange, whatever word you want to use, is that sometimes they will put something in the changelog of an update that they are rolling out, and then it will not appear. And then a few months later, that same feature will show up in a changelog of a future version. And you have to then wonder, is it actually coming this time, or is this going to happen again? Again, no other consumer electronics company would put out a changelog for an update they're rolling out for, a critical operating system feature and then just not be there. Imagine if Apple said, here's iOS 18.3 and it has this feature, and then you updated your iPhone and it didn't have that feature, you'd I mean, they would generate headlines, right? But that sort of criticism aside, let's talk about what Meta's changelog claims is in V71, because that's all we can really say. Firstly, they say it will bring a refresh of the system interface design. So you can see that in the image on screen here. If you're listening, you can go to uploadvr.com and search V71 to see it. So it just seems to be a general design refinement where, it looks to be a little bit more 3D and a little bit more standout. The biggest change is the settings, which is being revamped from being a kind of card solution to a side tab, what you would see in your iPad or your Android tablet. It's more similar to that. The other change is that they have added an AI model that converts microphone audio into estimated facial expressions. This is a really interesting one. AI audio to expression. So right now we're using what you could describe as the previous version of this, which is just called the Oculus Lip Sync SDK. So it's converting microphone audio into lip movement. That's what you're seeing right now. We don't have face tracking, but that's only our lip. So this new AI model that Meta said will be available soon for developers as part of the SDK and is relying on a built-in feature of V71 will not only map this microphone audio to mouth movement, but to facial expression as well. So if you're saying something that sounds like, you're getting more animated and more lively, your face will kind of perk up a bit. And if you laugh, presumably, that will be mapped there too. So it'll be really fascinating to see how well that works. And we obviously will try that out here as soon as we can. The next thing they have changed here is smoother pass-through. So they say they have improved the camera frame rates to align with your display frame rates. So that should feel less juddery when it comes to moving objects in the scene. Train support for travel mode. This was announced at Connect. People said this already worked. I've spoken to some people who have tried a Quest on a train with travel mode, and they say it worked fine. But this is obviously official support, so presumably it's going to work better. And maybe some trains it didn't work on before. Dolby Atmos and Dolby Digital Surround. So you get those surround sound audio technologies, and that's mapped to your headset's rotation. So if you have like a Dolby Atmos soundstage, as you rotate your head, you'll get that spatial audio. They say that this is going to be supported in like select browser streaming services and that they'll announce future ones in future. I think there was a hint at Connect that Prime Video is going to get support for this, the Prime Video app, but I don't think that's live yet. It's just an update making, audio within the media watching experience on Quest better when platforms support that. A first-party calendar app, so Horizon OS Calendar, it supports Google Calendar, it supports Outlook Calendar, it supports events in Horizon Worlds and Horizon Workrooms. A shortcut to remote desktop and quick settings, so that's not necessarily an app anymore. You just go on to your quick settings here, you hit remote desktop, and assuming you have that software installed in your PC, you will have a 2D window with your PC monitor. So that's lowering the friction to that. Improvements to scene mesh scanning. So instead, if your room is outdated, you've moved your furniture or other changes have happened in the room that have changed the physical layout, instead of having to rescan the room, you can now just update it. So you go in and hit update in the scene mesh setup settings, and you look around and it'll figure out that that piece of furniture that was there isn't there anymore, or that new piece of furniture is here, and that'll all be fixed in. So it just reduces the time it takes to update your room mesh. A volume mixer for app and call audio, so that's here. So this is actually really useful for playing multiplayer VR games. Instead of having to turn down that annoying music in the menu as you're trying to set up with your friends, you just go into here and bring the app audio way down and bring your call audio way up is what you probably want to do. The ability to send flat and spatial videos in Horizon chats. So the built-in chat system, you can now send people videos in it, and those can include spatial videos. So you can be on the Horizon phone app on your iPhone and send someone who you have on the Horizon Friends system a spatial video you captured on your iPhone 16 or 15 Pro, whatever, and then they open that in the headset and they have a spatial video. So that's obviously their kind of equivalent to the iMessage system. The ability to pair controllers and styluses inside the headset. This is one of those features that was supposed to have come multiple updates ago, but didn't. So instead of having to use the phone app to pair a new touch controller, say your old one broke, or the Logitech MX Ink stylus, you can do that in the headset. And finally, an app permissions indicator on the menu bar. I don't think we see that. Well, yes, we see that over here. So you'll notice that on your iPhone or Android phone, if an app is using the camera or your location or something like that, you get like a little colored dot as a privacy indicator of, something right now is using your whatever. They're bringing that to Horizon OS, so you'll be able to see if an app is currently using a privacy critical feature. And that's it.
Yeah, so I'm seeing our commenters talk about things like they're waiting for the Android XR release, so Android's platform to release. I will point out the underlying, you can find the underbelly of Android inside the Quest operating system at various routes. So when you want to go turn on various settings, you very much arrive at this Android underbelly of the OS in various places. But we're all waiting in anticipation for Google actually, coming out and delivering headsets with partners. Samsung is the big one there that we're expecting for a long time here. We're now in that period where the time to do that is kind of, if history shows any indication, we'll start seeing leaks and hype built over the next month to month and a half, and then we'll see a big release at CES. That would be my expectation at this point, but that can still change, right? They could debut that whenever. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone calling out, hitting that like button. It does help us. I enjoyed the comments that we had on our post show last week. That cracked me up. Let's see. There's also Onakazi talking to TMS. We saw also a viewer out there in Poland. But thank you for tuning in from over there. But this comment of Google abandoning a product after 6 to 18 months. Yes, they've got a very rich history in killing off products, but the hint there, the reason I started off this section kind of talking about that is Android does support VR, technically speaking, right? Like it is the underbelly of Quest OS in the purest way of talking about it.
Sure, yeah, you could say that. I mean, you got to distinguish between the open source core of Android, AOSP, the Android open source project, which is what Amazon's Fire OS is built off, and Meta's Horizon OS, and of course Google's Android, which is again their own Android open source project core plus all of their extra peripheral Google services. The AOSP core does not support virtual reality, and Meta has been building on top of it for 6 years now. Actually, more than that when you consider that they obviously were working on it before they released Oculus Go, so at least 7 or so years. And in that time, we've seen them, add a bunch of it and overhaul a bunch of those core systems and build them out to be more suitable for VR and now mixed reality. So over time, you do see Meta replacing some of these built-in interfaces with their own. For example, it used to be that when you went to connect to a Wi-Fi network or pair a Bluetooth device, you would see a 2D floating projection of the built-in AOSP interface for that. And now, of course, you see a Meta version for all of that. And that's what you see with every little update, right? You see all of these small changes of Meta wanting to eventually make this a full-fledged platform competitor to Vision OS, which is based off iPad OS, and of Android XR, which is going to be the Googleified version of AOSP plus Google stuff, plus support for VR and mixed reality and all those kind of things.
The other comments were there at the start, driven by Geek Odin, talking about another user experience change, and I empathize with that particular view because the other people are pushing back, like it needs to get better. But the problem with VR, like Facebook always was changing around its homepage, right? It's always like choosing to promote new products over here on the right, like a new bar system over here on the left for interacting with the menu. And it was all, every time you came back to Facebook 3 months apart, you would see a whole new interface and have to figure out, how do I do this basic thing that I used to do a few years ago? And I feel that same sort of company-wide thing happening with the user experience, the UI inside Quest. And it's more frustrating in VR because it feels like someone has come into your home and rearranged where everything is in your home like they took the toaster and put it from here to over here, and they took the clock and put it from here to over here. And that's what it feels like when this gets that many overhauls, and it's always deeply confusing.
Sure, I definitely can empathize with that. It's if you're used to something, it can be very frustrating. I don't think this one is really that significant, though, in terms of moving anything. It looks to more be kind of improving the contrast of things and making it clear what is a button and isn't, and maybe just making it a little bit sharper. The only thing that's really being massively overhauled, as far as we can tell, is the settings, which I think is actually a good thing, right? The old settings panel, or I guess the current one for most people right now, it was pretty confusing. It was built originally back in 2019 when there were very few sections, and now you open it and you're like, which of these am I supposed to go to? And the search wasn't great. They claim they've improved the search here, and I think a tabbed interface, like people are used to on their iPad and Android tablet, is probably better for that. The other thing is, in a historical context, when these categories are early, you do kind of see a lot of experimentation and fast movement, right? Think of how much Windows changed in terms of, from Windows XP to Windows Vista to then 7 and 8 and 10, right? There was a lot of change there. Android itself, Google's Android, if you bought an Android phone in 2015, the UX would have been a lot different than if you bought one in 2010. And only kind of in the past 5 or 10 years have we seen a convergence to a very similar experience between iOS and Android. I think what will be critical in the long term, rather than the specifics of the user interface design, is standardizing on a at least casual interaction technology. And it looks like, from the reports we've seen of what Meta may be planning for its future headsets, and what we're obviously seeing from the likes of Visor and others, is that the gaze and pinch interface of Apple Vision Pro, looking with your eyes and pinching with your fingers, could be that standardized interface, at least for casual usage, right? For bringing up a Netflix movie or doing, moving around a monitor. Obviously, for gaming, that's a completely different kettle of fish. But when it comes to general interaction, I think right now, the fact that you have Quest headsets without eye tracking, having to design around a weird combination of direct touch and laser pointers, and then Vision Pro with its eye tracking, that's where you see the biggest division of all.
Yeah, and so when you think about, I love that context there at the end there, and I love Davin's comments. So maybe you could read out Davin's comments there, and any others you want to talk about before we move on to the next section. But I love that context when you think about how these platforms will evolve over the course of years, right? A lot of the things we're going to talk about later in this section are the multi-year rollout plan for multiple Apple Vision headsets, and you look at OLED, you look at eye tracking, you look at hand tracking, 3 very bold, important decisions that Apple has made in supporting its platform from the start. And it's going to be, we're going to have to see if Apple backtracks on any of those. I don't think they're going to backtrack on any of those. I think we'll get track controllers from third parties and from other ways. But I don't think OLED and the eye tracked interface is going anywhere, and that means everyone else has to find a way around it, right? Like it's so useful to Meta to have headsets that are priced as low as $300 and $400, $500, but they come without some of these features like eye tracking that feels like magic when it works right. And yeah, we'll talk about some of those new updates later. But any comments you want to respond to before we move on to the Live story?
Yeah, I'm sure we can read out Davin's comment, as you say. Davin says, until they hit mainstream audiences, they'll keep moving fast and breaking things. Unfortunately, a side effect of being the early adopters. Yeah, and obviously then they're pointing out that at least they haven't turned any of Quest headsets into a brick like Magic Leap and Windows Mixed Reality have in ways. But yeah, I broadly agree that it's very unlikely Apple will ever release a headset without eye tracking, and I would even argue it's very unlikely that Meta will release another headset without eye tracking either. It does look like when you're trying to navigate an interface like this, it's just a lot easier to, rather than having to either reach out with your finger, which is a kind of stressing movement, right? You're actually physically doing something compared to like moving a mouse like this or just moving your thumb on a touchscreen, having to physically reach your hand out to an interface. It's not a great long-term solution. And then The problem with laser pointers, while they're great for these huge interfaces where you're picking between like 5 or 6 different options, once you have a bunch of different little tiny buttons, like the kind of interface that you need for a proper operating system, the tiniest twitch in your wrist causes a large movement, which means that for just hand tracking, optically based, any little inaccuracy gets magnified and makes it a really frustrating experience, or you have to go and pick up a controller, which is frictionful in itself.
So Nicholas asking, why did other people get to try the Orion, but we didn't, or have you been invited yet? And then Davin answering that with his own theory there. I think it's because Orion is impressive to people that don't realize how much more a Quest can do. I think that's maybe generally the right direction there. We're gonna assess the field of view, the computing power that's possible. If you go read our write up that we had from the developer, I was in the room. I joined a developer, forced my way into the room by joining a developer to see their demo. And one of the things that we have in our report exclusively on UploadVR.com is pointing out that the codec avatar that developer saw inside of the glasses was not the actual person who they were supposed to be talking to. So the Meta employee was wearing a different Meta employee's avatar as a skin. And that was something that David and I were told that Meta did not want to do when we saw a demo of it at SIGGRAPH some time earlier. You don't find that kind of reporting elsewhere. We're gonna dig in and tease apart these things on technical levels that others are not. I also think, just more broadly, Meta. We will have to see how Meta aligns its AR department and its VR department over the long term. Do they interact well? Do they have cross-pollination of technologies that work together in any way, shape, or form? Or is there an internal division that becomes hard to overcome? Because, like, the way these companies operate is they give big incentives to people that achieve certain goals. What if the VR people don't get those incentives? What if they aren't getting the same amount of funding that the AR section of the team gets? We'll keep an eye on how that develops over time. We'll have a lot of deep reporting. And we had a great write-up on Orion with some things you won't find anywhere else, even though they denied us that demo. So we don't need demos to report on things. We can still get it done.
Yeah, I would just echo that and say definitely go and read Alex's hands-on impressions with Orion on uploadvr.com, the guest post from Alex. You can just search Orion on uploadvr.com and you'll see that excellent guest post. There's one comment I want to bring up here from TMS saying, early adopters, this current run of VR has been around for 10 years now, in reference to us saying that this is still one of those things where, as early adopters in a new space, you're going to see some rapid changes until there's standardization. And it's important to know that the idea of 10 years being a long time in technology is only a phenomenon of the modern smartphone era, where smartphones emerged as actually the culmination of decades of mobile computers. And people had this idea that smartphones emerged out of nothing with the iPhone in 2007. And so then from 2007 to 2017, there's so many changes, right? And you get to maturity by then. But in fact, the journey of personal pocketable computers started decades before that. So we're still actually very, very early in this journey. And yes, you are still in the early adopter phase. And I'll bring up the chart again we had from last week, just to be crystal clear that, this is the start here for personal computers. And if you put that forward 10 years, you're only here. And we're still very much so in that era for virtual reality. This is still, believe it or not, the early days. And everyone who uses a headset today is still, on the grand historical scheme of things, an early adopter.
I love this chart, and a lot of people really responded to this chart, both in the live chat and in the post chat, loving this chart in this context. And we could spend a lot of time looking at this. If you look at this period, right, from 1990 to 1996, that's when the internet really starts coming online, right? And then you see it becoming wireless over this period, right, when the numbers really start getting enormous and the speeds start going up in big amounts. We already have the internet, right?
And the iMac, you get that those were the kind of inflection points there as well.
So we already have the internet, right? That's not going to cause the same inflection point because, right, they're already built into all personal computers. What are the technologies that are going to drive this big adoption? Well, we already talked about one: codec avatars and personas. Apple's version of the same photorealistic avatars. When like David does look like a cartoon, right? Our audience knows David looks like a cartoon, right? There's no like getting around it. That's the best we can do with the avatar technology that he built into the studio, right? With the AI or the algorithms trying to guess at our facial expressions. Well, Apple went and put actual sensors on its headset and shipped a product that is priced out of most people's ability to buy it because they wanted the nuance of expression. They wanted you to actually feel like you're present with another person. That's the technologies that I think are going to transform this adoption curve into the adoption curve you all want to see or expect.
Yeah, I broadly
There,
agree with that. Full body photorealistic avatars are the internet for this technology. Once you get that at an affordable price, once people for roughly $500 or less can get a headset that if their friend gets it on the other side of the planet, they see a photorealistic full body representation of their friend. That's when you get that kind of inflection point where this thing becomes as important as having FaceTime or a telephone, right? Because this is a fundamental step change in remote communication. Now, we don't expect that to happen soon. Again, we keep talking about this as being a multi-decade thing, and we are still in the relatively early days. If you look at these headsets, they're still rather primitive compared to the kinds of technologies that are in development. And yeah, this is still the early days.
So I saw people talking about Denny from Cloudhead, his comments on Orion. He got to see it, and I saw those comments, and I put one of his questions to him on Twitter, which he didn't respond to. He was basically saying we'll get there in various ways when it comes to bringing computing power to these glasses and field of view. And I asked him this very simple question: what year do you think we will stand on the beach in the gallery in a pair of AR glasses? He didn't respond to that question, and that's my ultimate problem or thing that we have to overcome. You'll notice that over time, Cloud had built the Gallery 1 and 2, which didn't sell super well. They didn't get a whole lot of people into VR headsets. Then they shipped Pistol Whip, which you could pick up in 30 seconds, get the gameplay down, figure that amazing feeling of dodging bullets within seconds of playing, and that game sold really well. I think they just celebrated their 5th-year anniversary of that game with just an incredible free DLC like update plan for that game. Really significant game to have in VR, but that was them evolving from like figuring out how do I take the mechanics of games that I love and apply them to VR, and it took a good 5 years, a long period to figure that out. And then the Orion demos, the game they showed off in those demos was Pong. They showed off Pong, and they had a QR code on a table there that they didn't want in photographs. They didn't want in a lot of the videos and photos from the demo, but they had a QR code for centering a game of Pong. And like, is that the best computing power gaming we can expect out of AR glasses? And I don't think that, like, I'm being overly facetious there.
Well,
Like, there will be amazing things done with games in AR, but my point is they're going to be wholly different than the things you get out of wide field of view VR.
yeah, I don't think you're actually being facetious there. Meta's CTO openly said that there is an order of magnitude less computing power in Orion than a Quest headset. That we saw a former Meta employee who was working on Orion say that they told their content team to think about it more like a Game Boy or Nintendo DS than a full-fledged console. It is going to be a very, very different type of platform. But I do think we've gone a little bit off topic there. So let's move on to the app. No, let's move on to talk about Live, our second topic on the Meta section today. So if you're not familiar with Live and you haven't been following the news this year, earlier this year, Meta announced that it would deprecate its official third-person capture solution for PC VR, and support Live as the official solution. And Live has been around since like 2016. Its flagship feature on PC VR, at least, is allowing you to mix in third-person footage of you playing VR with third-person footage of an actual physical camera behind you, and to line those up and mix them so that you get mixed reality VR. Now, that's not mixed reality in the same sense that we use it in recent years to talk about games where it mixes virtual objects into your room. It's actually the opposite. It's bringing a view of you into a VR game. Confusing that those two terms are used to refer to different things, but it is what it is. Now, that all said, this new news, the Live Creator Kit, does not support that mixed reality feature. Instead, this is about letting you record content completely standalone on Quest without a PC. So already, of course, on your Quest, you can use the built-in system recording feature to record a first-person view of you playing VR or mixed reality. The problem with that first-person view, though, is that you have to choose either between square, the default aspect ratio of each eye, or a cropped widescreen, because it doesn't magically make the headset wider field of view. All you're doing when you record in widescreen on a Quest is cropping in. So one feature of the Live Creator Kit here is that you can go into first-person mode and expand the field of view. So you can actually get wide field of view, widescreen recording that doesn't cut off the things on the top and bottom of your screen. I'll see if I can find an image that illustrates what I'm talking about with the cropping well. Another feature, of course, is third-person recording. So again, this isn't mixed reality, but it's still letting you record your in-game avatar playing in third person, which is obviously great. Now, this is something that developers have to implement on a per-game basis, but if they do, by default, they can get this built-in interface, or they can build their own interface that matches their game better. Live handles all of the video encoding and all of the kind of technical aspect of that. The game developer would just have to build their own interface. These videos are recorded on your Quest, and so the idea here is that we expect this to be used by content creators, by developers even, especially those who aren't going to, if they're just making like a quick video, they don't want to use the MetaQuest Developer Hub to record to their PC, and of course just by users alike who want to, record cool footage to share on social media and elsewhere.
Yeah, very, very important tool. I did some of my earliest work with UploadVR was messing around with fantastic contraption with the early mixed reality setups there that use the Live tool, and had 4 quadrants on your PC that you had to cut apart to make a foreground and a background. Very fun stuff, but it was such a pain. And so having this built in on Standalone is a major, major step forward for conveying why VR gaming is so great. There are a couple comments here I want to call out before we move on, or I think they're good transition things to talk about as we get into the Apple section. Anything you want to call out?
Sure, yeah. So Opsar is asking, is this on the Oculus Store? So no, this is not an app. This is a feature that developers can easily build into their apps. So Gorilla Tag is the first major title that has announced that it will support this, right? So in the coming weeks or whenever it launches in Gorilla Tag, you'll be able to bring up this interface, set up a third person, a selfie camera, a wide field of view, first person, and then do this sort of recording. It's technically developers could have built this in themselves, but there's actually a lot of work that goes into doing the encoding in a performant way, and there are some licensing issues actually with using certain codecs in a commercial project. So just before we move on, to be clear of what I was talking about when it comes to first-person footage, if you use the built-in Quest recording, you either choose between a full aspect ratio square footage, which you see in blue here, or if you go to widescreen, all you're really doing is getting a lossless crop, which is this red view here. So you would actually miss out on stuff down here and up here. And in some scenes, especially like a cockpit game, you're going to miss the cockpit. In a lot of games, you're going to miss the weapon you're holding. So with Live, you can actually just get a wider rendered field of view. Now, that isn't performance free, right? You're actually technically rendering a third eye. The camera itself is a third view being rendered. But if you are looking to, create content, that's something that you're going to be okay with. And in games with dynamic resolution, they'll bring down the dynamic resolution. You're muted, Ian.
The thing I wanted to call out here, which is the transition here a little bit to the Apple section, was Francisco saying, I don't know, I think future Orion Pokemon Go will pop off as much or more than 2016. And Nicholas Johansson saying, you'll get, well, there was a person saying that just having their TV in their glasses would be a killer feature. I actually saw the Rainio XR2 glasses on the subway this week, yesterday. I've never seen that before. I've been on the lookout for VR headsets on trains or buses. And I actually saw glasses used for that use case, watching basically TV on their glasses directly on the subway, which is a big moment for glasses to achieve. But this core question of Pokemon Go, we've talked about it before, and I have to repeat. Imagine super tall Pokemon, a Whalmer, or one of the tall ones, the one with the long neck. Can't think of its name offhand. Those are going to get cut off by low field of view glasses. Even at 70 degrees on the highest end glasses that Meta could put together and show to the public, a lot of your Pokemon are going to be cut off even across the room as they move in closer to, and you want to pet a Pikachu. Parts of them are going to get cut off, and it's going to completely destroy the illusion, this feeling of them actually being with you. Whereas a mixed reality headset, like you've got on a Quest 3 or a 3S or an Apple Vision Pro, is going to let you see the whole creature. It's going to keep you contained within that illusion. And then they've also got to bring in things like people detection, so that when an actual person walks up to you, you address them and talk to them and aren't cut off from that person as well. That's the very cutting edge of VR technology right now. Only the Apple Vision Pro right now has that sort of active people detection at a ridiculous price point nobody can afford. Yet that needs to come down. It needs to become more common. And I'm still waiting to see that VR user on the subway, right, locking themselves out for a 30-minute ride. I think there's a sweet spot in VR of using VR for like 1 to 2 hours or 1 to 3 hours for a focus session. And I don't think it works for like 30-minute TV shows or 20-minute. Like, you don't want to take around this bulk just to put on a single TV show. You want to put on this bulk to go watch a movie or do a little bit longer. And we'll have to see how that plays out with AR and VR glasses rolling out in different ways.
Yeah, a lot of interesting thoughts there. We have referred to this idea in past episodes of the Pokemon Go park battle test of when would AR glasses be good enough that you could have a Pokemon battle with your friend who's standing, a reasonable distance in front of you like you would in a Pokemon battle, and be able to see their Pokemon and your Pokemon at the same time within the same field of view without having to rotate your head up and down, which would mean that you're cutting off one of the Pokemon. I think Orion actually probably would be good enough for that for some small Pokemon. But as we've pointed out many times, and in an article that you should go and read, my editorial, the first AR glasses that you can actually buy will have a narrower field of view than Orion by quite a significant margin, actually. And that means that it's going to be a long time until you have AR glasses with the field of view that allows for a lot of the compelling use cases that people are imagining. Meanwhile, mixed reality headsets will get better. They will get higher resolution. They will get slimmer. The pass-through will get better. They'll get lighter. They'll get extra features like the ones Ian is referring to. And, it's the common fallacy that people have of imagining the AR glasses of the 2030s and comparing them to the mixed reality headsets of 2024, when in reality, what you should be comparing them to is the mixed reality headsets of the early 2030s, which they're going to blow your mind, right? We've even seen that report of what Meta plans to put out in 2027 when it comes to bulk, right? They plan to put out a mixed reality headset tethered to a puck in your pocket that is only slightly heavier than the Orion glasses, right? So this is something that will have displays and pancake lenses plus cameras to pass through the real world and come in at like 110, 120 grams, according to that report. That's going to be the kind of headset you get while the AR glasses that come along in that year reportedly will have a field of view of like 50 degrees. So it's you really have to keep that in mind, because this is just we I know we're a broken record about this. We keep going on about it, but it's because it's become so much of the discussion of this industry in the past months, and it's just completely divorced from the reality of the technology.
Yeah, so Quentin, a longtime member there, thank you for your support, Quentin, saying, I don't understand this narrative that it is VR or AR. I really think we will see VR as an at-home device and AR as a daily carrier device like a cell. Yes, we have the first reporting in the world on that. You can go find Michael Abrash, the head of research over at Meta. I put the camera in front of him while with a whole bunch of headsets behind him. And asked him this question, and he outlined that Meta believes we will have both. And he outlined exactly that difference for them. You've got you've got a VR headset, and the only time you're not using your VR headset is when you're using your AR glasses. And but the thing is, when you think about that, right, we're going to have both, and they're both going to be enormous parts of our daily driving. We're still shoving the last remaining bits of what personal computers do for us into headsets. We haven't even completed that journey of we'll talk about Ultrawide here in a second, but like that journey of just giving you all the benefits of your PC while inside a headset. Right now, we've had to do so many sacrifices to get even a smidgen of what you can do with your PC inside a VR headset. And as soon as that sort of fully envelops what you can do in a headset, yeah, it starts becoming, I'm not getting the laptop. I'm getting a headset, right? I'm not getting the desktop. I'm getting a headset. And when that's when the chart really starts increasing, right? Until when we start putting all that stuff up. But yeah, David brings this chart up all the time. We're going to have to keep rehashing this with our audience, because I'm depending on you, our audience, to go and explain this to the people who are excited by these, but they get their minds blown whenever we show them the best things you can do on one of these, right? The last time they tried one of these was a Gear VR in 2016, an Oculus Go, a cardboard box that they got shipped by the New York Times. Like, there's still millions and millions of people that's their conception of what VR headsets do. And you all know that VR has walked an enormous amount forward from there. And we're going to go an enormous amount forward from there even before we get to the glasses form factor.
Yeah, this really does sum up the future of computing in one simple chart, and that's why we love to show it. I'm sure it's part of the VR download drinking game at this point. So are we ready to move on to the Apple section, or is there anything else you want to say in the Meta section?
Nope, we're good. Let's move on to Apple. So this is Apple now selling a Belkin-made top strap for the Vision Pro Solo Knit Band. I feel like David published this and saw this as like a victory lap on just Apple missing the mark here at launch, and actually having to go full circle with better weight distribution than just making something look nice. So David, why don't you break this down?
Yeah, so this might not sound really significant, but it is because of the reason Ian just pointed out. It's Apple kind of admitting, as we've seen before in a earlier admission, that their approach to ergonomics on Vision Pro just wasn't good enough. It's the biggest criticism of this device, apart from its price, from our review and many others, is that it's just too damn heavy. And we've seen heavy headsets before in this industry, but usually what you try to do then is deliver a strap system that better balances, distributes, or moves that weight around your head, instead of just trying to wish it away. So out of the box, Apple Vision Pro comes with this Solo Knit Band pre-attached. And don't get me wrong, this thing is really comfortable. It's the best rear padding I've ever tried in a headset, and Apple said that they invented a 3D knitting technology to bring it to life. And I believe them. It's really comfortable and well padded on the back of your head. The problem is it's just not enough for a 600-gram headset. You need some sort of top strap. Most headsets that we've seen so far have a front-to-back top strap, but I think to support certain hairstyles, some companies like Apple just aren't really interested in doing that. So like within maybe 2 months before launch, Apple probably realized that like this thing's not going to be good enough for a lot of people. And so they put in this kind of last minute optional solution in the box. So in the Vision Pro box, in every Vision Pro box, you get this other dual loop band, which gives you a side to side top strap combined with a much thinner rear strap. And so you get the better weight distribution with this solution, but then you lose the nice, comfortable 3D knitted padding, right? All of that R&D on 3D knitting thrown away because you have to then use this thing, which I don't really like in the back of my head. It just doesn't feel nice, but the Solo knit band does. So Belkin now sells on the Apple Store the best of both worlds, right? It's really simple product. $50, which is obviously a bit of a rip-off for what it is, but it gives you a side-to-side top strap that slots in for the Solo knit band, and it's officially sold by Apple. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, who we often cite on this as having good sourcing within Apple, says that when Apple doesn't want to admit that an accessory is necessary, but does want to get it out there, it turns to Belkin. And Belkin is actually a subsidiary of Foxconn, which is Apple's manufacturers for most of its products, including iPhones. So, this is third party by technicality only. Essentially, this is kind of a through the back door first party solution from Apple.
Yeah, I don't think we need to hang on this one very much. We can probably move on pretty quickly to the next subject here, unless there's anything you want to cover here.
Just one comment here, which we pointed this out in our article. Craig Melville is pointing it out that Apple actually showed off a side-to-side top strap with the Solo knit band during its Vision Pro demos, and that's absolutely correct. Ian's first demo of Vision Pro at WWDC 2023, when Apple first announced the headset, had this strap, and they accidentally left it in one of the shots of their original Vision Pro introduction video. You can see it here. It's actually slightly different than Belkin's. You can see that this goes underneath the side strap here, which is obviously probably a little bit less comfortable. But we actually saw this one, this directly first-party, simpler one, in some Apple patents, believe it or not. We saw that in Apple patents before Vision Pro launched. So at some point, I think they were exploring doing this, and then, they just didn't. So the last thing I want to say on this is I think they should include, I think this should have been first party. There's no need to do this way. It should be in the box. This should be in the box. It's a $3,500 product. There's no excuse to not have this in the box.
I like to think that there are silent Apple folks out there watching our show, understanding that we dive into them as much as we dive into Meta. They can't speak, so they don't, right? But I like to imagine that they get that feedback from us and really respond to it, right? We dive into this stuff very, very deeply. Things like personas to ship on Apple, while Meta had it just as a research product, the reverse pass-through is just a research product at Meta, but actually shipped from Apple. Like these are the very cutting edge of technology. And David's feedback here on this like little loop band, right? I'm seeing people already trying to imagine what the next headset is going to be from Apple, and we want it to feel good on the face. And yeah, absolutely, I've seen it almost universal. Remember how bad of a brick the original Quest was, right? It was a real brick on your face, and I think Apple kind of had to make the same sacrifice to get this market started for themselves.
Yeah, so as David's alluding to in the comments, and I alluded to at the start of this section, Apple actually seemingly knows that this Solo knit band isn't enough, because a few months ago, as we reported, they actually stopped using this in store demos. So if you went to a store demo when Vision Pro launched, you would get this thing. But they've actually been using this dual loop band for months now. And if you see anyone trying an Apple Vision Pro in an Apple store, you'll see them using this. So Apple clearly knows they screwed up here. And I wonder if this is kind of like a last minute patchwork. And this is what I really wonder. Is this what we will see in Apple store demos in a few weeks from now? Will Apple move to this? Because I have ordered one of these and I do plan to test it out, but presumably, I don't like to ever describe a product I haven't tried, but just by having put both of those previous ones on my head and seeing that, I mean, it's a side-to-side top strap, right? Presumably, as long as there's no weird design flaw here, this should be the most comfortable solution.
Yeah, I'm seeing some people talking about the Ana Pro products out there. We'll try to get to look at some of those as soon as we can. And I like the joke about that. Like that, they've got the pinch emoji inside the pinch inside the emojis. That's kind of cool. I just going to call out before we move on to the Vision OS 2.2. My cat jumped on my lap, and so if you see my hands petting a cat, that's what I'm doing. So my hands also have to compete with the hand tracking when the cat is up in my face. So that's why my hands are being weird.
Yeah, people are pointing out that there are, and of course, third-party solutions. There are kind of bigger, bulkier straps. And Mindweaver's asking, wouldn't a front-to-back one be better? Yeah, there are ones that you can kind of put on, though, of course, the Vision Pro is not designed for that, the actual headset itself. So the way you attach that can be a little bit problematic. Some of them try to attach to the vents, for example, which I really don't recommend playing around with that on a $3,500 product. This is, of course, just of the kind of officially endorsed solutions we're talking about. There are, of course, third-party head straps like there are with every headset out there.
Well, this next one is a very, very big one. If there's been one segment of the VR community that has been active and actually talking about Apple Vision Pro, it has been the people waiting for this feature to launch on Vision OS. And it's ultra-wide. Ultra-wide Mac Virtual Display is now in the latest betas for Mac and Apple Vision Pro. And it really is, it's the purest term, game changer. Game changer, it is a game changer. I'll get into the games. David can talk about the feature itself and productivity, but I want to talk about the games here in a minute after you do that.
Yep. So if you aren't familiar, since launch, Vision Pro has been able to extend your Mac display. So it turns off the physical display and then it spawns out of the display into a giant virtual display. But until now, that's been limited to your regular aspect ratio. And with now Vision OS 2.2 beta and Mac OS 15.2 beta, you seem to need both as far as we can tell. There are two new modes. So in addition to the regular mode, you get wide mode and you get ultra wide mode. And in this image here, you see ultra wide. This is an interesting solution that Apple has gone for, which is obviously different than what you get with the likes of Meta's Horizon Workroom solution that gives you 3 monitors, because the interesting part is that they actually occupy the same space. It's just that with the triple monitor solution, you're still getting the gaps of a physical setup, whereas with this, you're just getting one giant ultra-wide solution. The other thing they've done here is made some improvements. It's not just those new two modes. First is that you get audio routing now. So instead of the audio coming from your MacBook or whatever's connected to the Mac, the audio now goes to the Vision headset or whatever you have connected to the Vision headset, like your AirPods. The other improvement they've made is that they now use foveation. So instead of just sending the whole desktop stream as one resolution, they now adapt the resolution and encoding quality based on where you're looking. And they said that was actually necessary to pull this off, because this is an 8K solution. It's like having 2 4K monitors side by side. And that actually has an advantage beyond just enabling this. It actually means that, in my experience and of others that have tried this, it is actually a higher quality experience you get. The visual quality is better because they are able to prioritize the resolution and encoding to what you're looking at. So you actually, in many cases, are going to get something that, because of the size of this, is either on par or better than what your built-in display might be. Before we discuss this more, I just want to say this still has my favorite feature of Mac Virtual Display, which is that this is a direct wireless connection. You don't have to be on a Wi-Fi network. It doesn't matter what your Wi-Fi network is. It doesn't matter if there are a bunch of devices running along your network. This is creating a point-to-point connection between the headset and the Mac, and you can use it on a plane, you can use it on a train, you can use it anywhere you want.
So Geek Odin playing the devil's advocate here, as he does sometimes. So sorry for calling you out on your comments, but I totally am there with you on your comment there. But I do want to call out Afro Badger, Afro Badger out there saying that their son wants to say hi. So hi. He will be a big VR enthusiast in the future. So yeah, curious what games you're playing or if you're playing them yet. But we'll be looking for you in the future in our VR headsets. And then Gee's comment saying, I don't understand what all the fuss about this is. It's just a different monitor aspect ratio. I get that, and I sort of struggled with some of this myself. The game changer aspect of this that I wanted to talk about. Stardew Valley, Factorio, some of these games that are like on the top downloaded, played list on Steam Deck are incredible when you stretch out the aspect ratio like this. When you have at the resolution David is talking about, I had previously stretched Stardew Valley out side by side on I have an ultra wide monitor that is not OLED. It's the cheapest ultra wide I could find, and when you play Stardew Valley on that screen, it uses up every single pixel that the machine can put out, and it uses it to great effect where you can see your entire farm. If you see the your house over here and you see all the way to the edge of your farm just in one view. And it's an amazing freeing effect compared to playing the game on a Steam Deck. When you can see that much of your farm before you even start out, you can see that, oh, I've got this little patch of grass I've got to go clear out up here. I've got 3 chickens that need tending to over here. It's wild to think of how great Steam Deck is for all of its portability, but we're also, you know, putting the entire game into this little monitor where all these games can suddenly take advantage of this wide aspect field of view that you can bring into a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just like inarguably, although I guess not for some people, cool, right? It's incredible to have in the footprint of a headset a enormous curved 8K ultra wide monitor. Well, we did say in our Vision Pro review, we criticized the price, we criticized the weight, as we just discussed. But one thing we said that this headset does really, really well, and it's a sign of the future of headsets, is that it can turn screens into software. It can give you an enormous 4K HDR cinema setup that you can bring in a backpack. And it can bring you now a giant ultra wide 8K monitor. What I've heard from some people that they've already tried using this is people who do video editing and audio editing, where they have their entire timeline of a project showing from here to here. Instead of having to constantly scroll all around it, they can see everything at once. And there are other use cases that are very cool here. I think the balance of practicality, though, is actually the wide mode. So remember I said there was the original normal mode, then there's now a wide mode and an ultra wide mode. It's actually that wide mode that I personally have found is most interesting, because you can pretty easily match it to the field of view of your headset. And then, you're getting a pretty much 100-degree monitor that encapsulates your entire view. That's personally where I think is the balance, if you do need to see everything at once for those use cases. But as you say, for things like gaming, I haven't actually tried 3D gaming on this, but 2D gaming like Stardew Valley, it sounds incredible. And I hope if this isn't well optimized for 3D gaming, I hope we see eventually a Vision OS native version of Steam Link that does support bringing it to an aspect ratio like this too, because how great would it be to play all kinds of games on this kind of setup?
Yeah, absolutely. I am very curious about that. One of the things I noticed is you can drag out the screen to about 180 degrees and it starts stretching around you into that curve. And then you get past a certain limit and it stops. It doesn't really let you go there. And gosh, a 3D game at that aspect ratio might make me sick to my stomach just because of the field of view getting put into that aspect ratio. But I also the use case I want to think about here or bring up here is it's a very, very real use case to think about the back to school sales that happen every year around fall time, where you want to equip your kid going off to college with a new piece of computing power to power them through their college years. And you can go get them a laptop, you can go get them a Chromebook, you can get them a MacBook, you can get them Windows PC. You can get them a whole bunch of machines. But until you've got this lopping off $1,500 in cost from the outlay that you're getting for your kid, if you're imagining you're getting your kid a little laptop with a really big monitor so that they can do their art effectively away at college, you've just taken the screen and turned it into software and reduced your cost dramatically. So the $3,500 system here is now like using reverse, odd math. You can start seeing the advantages, right? If you, instead of buying a $2,000 PC and a $1,500 screen, you're just buying the Apple Vision Pro, and your kid has their their laptop. Hopefully they already got, because yeah, we've got this problem here of not enough computing power in the Apple Vision Pro to make this feasible. But you start seeing the sales pitch coming together in real time right around us. We ready to move on to the next subject?
Yeah, I just think the last thing I want to say is that, I do agree with you that for certain people, this is going to have value today, especially for wealthy people. But it's really, for me, a more exciting prospect of things to come, right? Because the weight is going to come down, the cost is going to come down, all these things are going to change in the future. But Vision OS is going to be there, Mac OS is going to be there, and they're going to get this feature and more, right? We might be able to see better improvements to Mac Virtual Display in Vision OS 3 next year. So once you start to get something like this in a very light and comfortable headset that is affordable, that is when you see this kind of use case be able to take off. And this is just a glimpse of what people are going to get. This is the early adopters again seeing it.
On Akazi's comment there, don't forget how much more convenient it will be for someone to walk off with the headset versus the monitor. I'm thinking about that as well, and Apple has its Find My and Lost modes as like a built-in feature. You see these videos of people breaking into Apple stores and just ripping off all the phones off the tags, but the moment those phones leave the store, they're bricks, and have Find My built in to take people straight to the thieves' location. That's one of the things I think about when we talk about the public use cases of VR. If you're going to go to a library and use a VR headset in a library, you could probably rip a Quest off of someone's head and run away with it, and probably get into it, because not a lot of people activate the security features on it, and be okay. But in Apple Vision Pro, you've still got a bunch of the security features that are legacy from other platforms that they've implemented on the platform.
Yeah, and I mean, you have Optic ID, right? You have authentication through eye tracking. I'm very surprised that Meta never did that with Quest Pro. Maybe it's just that the scale never made it worth the effort. But I would expect that that is the equivalent of, the Touch ID and Face ID, that pretty much once every headset has eye tracking, every headset will be authenticated by that. So anyone else's iris will not work unless you've enabled some sort of guest mode to let them work.
All right, well, let's talk about the future here a little bit. So these next two subjects are starting to read the tea leaves, going off of rumors and reports out there that are trying to piece together what's happening from the component supply chain that is having to be built out at the cost of billions of dollars. So new factories coming online to try to make the ultra high resolution displays that we need in these headsets without distortions, without dead pixels going dead on you, but that will just destroy the experience overall. It is not easy to do. David has some of the best reporting in the world about the costs involved and the difficulty involved in getting these displays to be as high resolution as they are. And right now, these next two stories are starting to read the tea leaves on what do we do to get from where we are today to the next. So why don't we start off with the smart glasses first?
So the Ray-Ban Meta glasses seem to be a hit product. We've reported before how in the European region and EMEA in general, that in 60% of stores they're the top-selling product. Meta has said repeatedly to internal meetings, to journalists, and to investors that they are, in many cases, selling these things as fast as they can make them. And a month or two ago, we reported on the Informations report that Google and Samsung are interested in building a competitor using Google's Gemini AI, with Samsung handling the hardware. Now we have reports from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman that Apple is exploring jumping into with its own Siri smart glasses. The most recently, Apple sent out an email to employees about doing a study of the existing smart glasses products in the market. And that is what Apple does when it's initially thinking about entering a new product category. They start by saying, what's out there? Let's internally with our employees, because we don't want to leak out that we're actually thinking about this. What's good about these products? What's bad about these products? What could we do better? And what could we uniquely do that no one else could? So that's the stage that they're on right now. They're in the exploratory stage. And Mark Gurman, this Bloomberg reporter, is saying that his sources within Apple indicate that they're exploring releasing a product in 2027, and that it would, like the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, include visual AI, using onboard cameras and/or sensors to understand the environment around you, paired in with the enhanced version of Siri with Apple Intelligence that should be rolling out soon to iPhones. So it looks like Apple may be entering this product category just after Samsung and Google enter, and of course, Meta has been around in this category for years now. The Ray-Ban Meta glasses were where it actually took off, but they did have the Ray-Ban stories beforehand. And of course, Meta recently extended their partnership with EssilorLuxottica, the giant conglomerate that owns Ray-Ban and Oakley and a bunch of other glasses brands, into the 2030s. So Meta is leveraging Ray-Ban and potentially other EssilorLuxottica designs in future, whereas it's likely that Apple will probably go ahead with its own first-party Apple glasses design, and it seems like Samsung will have to go down that path too, because Google was reportedly in talks with EssilorLuxottica to try to get in on that deal just before Meta then swooped in and did this kind of 10-year and beyond extension alongside an investment that Meta has made in EssilorLuxottica.
Yeah, so I want to call out Davin's comment here about Virtual Desktop, saying that Virtual Desktop is the better product simply because Guy Godin has such overflowing passion to show up for VR in streams like this and other communities. Free options are good. Virtual Desktop is great. So I think that's the feeling a lot of people have out there for that product overall. And then Davin also asking, wonder if Apple's smart glasses would have AirTag functionality built in. I think that's absolutely a must. I don't think they would ship them without AirTag. And in fact, I have, even yesterday, I took one of these, I think they're called tag vaults, over on Amazon if you want to go look up this product. But it's a little fabric-based AirTag holder, and I affixed that to the inside of the Ray-Ban glasses case, and they close in on the top. And it's the tightest fit ever. I'm worried about actually damaging the glasses a little bit because of how tight a fit it is. But I saw my brother, he bought the Ray-Ban glasses as well, and he had a loose AirTag inside the case, just flopping around inside the case. I am imagining that's a pretty common thing for people out there to get the Ray-Bans and then AirTag them immediately because it's time to go. I want to find my glasses. Meta, of course, added the Meta AI feature where you can ask it to remember things, but the AirTag functionality is like magic. It's years ahead of what anybody else has done, where you can you've basically got your phone as a metal detector is what it feels like, and it's like you're zooming in on the product wherever it is in your house. It's fantastic and an absolute must-have. So I just wanted to call out those comments that I imagine Find My would be absolutely built into Apple's, and it's something that Meta needs to have in its next generation of these glasses in order to keep up.
Yeah, it does seem like that would be very sensible for Meta to integrate. So Davin in the comments asking or wondering, I guess, whether Apple's smart glasses, sorry, that's not the right comment. Biggs asking whether the lighter vision line may have been killed for the glasses tech. Now, we'll talk about that next, but I just want to be clear that what we're talking about here is not AR glasses. According to the same reporter, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, Apple indefinitely shelved its AR glasses project last year to kind of while it was getting Vision Pro over the finish line. And we haven't heard any reports of Apple restarting that project in any serious way. They obviously will be exploring everything like all of these big tech companies do. But for the reasons that we pointed out earlier on this show, and we point out every week, and we point out in our articles, acceptable AR glasses are still a long, long way away. And Meta's Orion prototype was in some way a mirage because it is not an example. It is not indicative of a product that can actually be shipped anytime soon. And the product that Meta does reportedly intend to ship in 2027, the AR glasses product, will be inferior to Orion in the key spec of field of view, which is fundamentally the most important constraint for transparent AR optics right now. And so it may be that Apple has just said, look, we know this. We're not willing to ship, what was Steve Jobs' old thing? We don't ship junk. We're not willing to ship something that isn't up to Orion or better standards. And by the time that that's possible, we can wind up a project and get that done. And even with Orion, it's still going to have a bunch of constraints by the time they do get to something that is as good as Orion. So it looks like Apple is starting just as Meta started, with simpler non-AR glasses, though we don't know any real details. There's no indication that this will have true augmented reality in them. But I think, in this new era of rapidly advancing machine learning with large language models providing this kind of breakthrough capability in AI assistants that we're seeing roll out in Meta AI, in Google Gemini, in the enhanced Siri with Apple Intelligence, reportedly in a new version of Alexa coming from Amazon next year. These AI assistants are going to make your old basic Siri and Google Assistant and Alexa look like dinosaurs. And that's why these companies are saying, we want our assistant to be with you throughout your day as much as possible. And one of the best form factors for that, as has been demonstrated by the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, is in smart glasses. And you don't need the true augmented reality capabilities that people thought would be needed for compelling smart glasses. When you don't need them as a baseline, when you can have an actually good AI assistant that isn't the pretty terrible things that we've had for the past 10 years.
So a couple comments here. Someone calling out Tile, saying that does very similar to what the AirTags do. And then Mastor is asking about the Surreal Touch controllers. We will try to get our hands on the Surreal Touch controllers as soon as we possibly can, but no updates for you right this moment on that. Let's see. Any others before we move on to the final subject here? I liked Onakazi talking about Metro telling them that they needed to set up multi-camera for the game on PC. That's funny to see that message after all these years, right? Let's talk about this last subject, David.
Sure. So this is kind of the bombshell report this week. And, we want to be clear that this is a claim. There is no confirmation of this. And there are other reports quite recently that seem to contradict it. So we'll kind of walk through what we have here. So the supply chain analyst, Ming-Chi Kuo, who is sometimes reliable and sometimes not about Apple's future plans, claims that the cheaper Vision headset that we all had expected to arrive next year in 2025 has now been delayed beyond 2027 for a while now. So the interesting part about this is that less than 2 weeks ago, the information reported that Apple told a supplier to expect to produce enough components for 4 million units of this cheaper headset. So that doesn't sound like something they're talking about. You wouldn't really talk about to a supplier for something that you're building in 2028 at this point in that level of specificity. And less than a month ago, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, the same person we were just talking about in the previous report, reiterated his reporting that this thing is coming in 2025, that it will likely lack the iSight front display, that it may use an A series chipset instead of an M series chipset. And his new reporting, so he's saying, this is my new reporting less than a month ago, is that Apple is now planning to price this thing around $2,000. So someone is wrong here. Either the reason I'm saying that is because, again, in Kuo's report, he said that it's being delayed beyond 2027 for a while now. So you have that. Either Kuo is wrong, Gurman is wrong, or Gurman is reporting something that he found out quite a while ago, as if it were new. It doesn't, these sources are not compatible with each other. And I mean, if Kuo's claim is correct, it would be really remarkable, right? You'd be talking about Apple's next Vision headset would just be the plain old refresh of Vision Pro with the M5 chipset that Kuo says that he has strong supply chain sourcing is going to happen. So if you haven't heard about that, to be clear, it's exactly what it sounds like. You take the Vision Pro of today, you upgrade the M2 chip to the M5, and then you release it, say, roughly 2 years after Vision Pro launched. You may maybe get some, supply chain refinements and manufacturing improvements, maybe even a new supplier for the micro OLED displays that brings it down by $500 or $1,000 at most dollars, but it's unlikely to be a dramatically differently priced and positioned product. We had thought that this Vision headset was going to come next year. We don't know the name. It could have been Vision Air. It still could happen, But if Quo's claim is correct, Apple has basically said we are not going to that price point for at least 4 years. That would be pretty killer to the whole Vision OS strategy and ecosystem. And it would relegate this to just being what Vision Pro is today, right? Because you're not going to change the needle by just upgrading the processor.
A full Mac inside your headset, right, rather than this iOS app approach would help. But David's right in the broad strokes, right? Like I think that would open up a bigger market, but not a hugely bigger market to get a full Mac inside your headset. I liked Davin's suggestion here that you might do this if you were stocking up on parts before the prices go up. That's a very interesting idea, and it's kind of what the back and forth that David and I have internally when we're talking about this is like because of the situation here of building out for the future, right? If they know that what the Vision Pro sold this many units at this price, if they have to remain at that price, you want to have enough parts on hand no matter what happens in trade wars or anything like that. You want to be ready. Remember, there was that period where Meta increased the price of its hardware, and that was fully in the opposite direction of what everyone expected out of this company. And they blamed it on the parts and manufacturing prices going up. So very interesting theory out there. I like Geek Odin calling out Caitlin Kalinowski, the person who led Orion development for a very long time. And then I think they were let go. And then they have now found a position leading the hardware effort towards AI-powered system over at OpenAI. So a very big payday, very big paycheck, I would imagine, for Caitlin to take that role, and a very big project to undertake for, one of the hottest companies in the world right now that can write blank checks for a lot of things for a long time because of just how much hype there is. We'll see if that hype turns. We'll see if the money dries up. We'll see if we're actually see a product out there, but very big moment to see OpenAI get into the hardware game with someone who built the very cutting edge of AR technology that's possible today. So we will be watching that space and what Caitlin does over there at OpenAI with huge interest. So anything in the comments you want to talk about here?
I just want to sort of provide an explanation for if Quo's report is true, why may it be the case? So let's just, for the sake of argument, assume that it is correct that Apple doesn't plan to ship this non-Pro Vision headset that's at a much cheaper price point until 2028. I think, again, we're just assuming it's true for a second here. I think the reason would be that they've decided that it's not meaningful enough to just get to $2,000. They would, in the scenario that this is true, be banking on a change in the supply chain that makes it possible to release something that is more like $1,000. So they may be saying, look, we can cut $1,500 off this thing, get something out without eyesight with an A series chip with cheaper materials and lighter materials. But, when we might sell a few million, but it's not going to actually move the needle enough for it to matter enough for our company, Apple, right, at its scale. So, one of the things that we've been tracking quite closely is the supply chain here. And so we know that the micro OLED displays in Apple Vision Pro are very expensive. You're talking on the order of $350 each. So that's adding alone just the displays, $700 of BOM cost. We know that Apple, for years, even before Vision Pro launched, we've seen multiple reports of them talking to two Chinese micro OLED display providers, Sia and BOE. Sia making the displays that go in big screen beyond today, BOE making the displays that are going into headsets like Visor and Play for Dream. But we did then see reports that those companies weren't meeting Apple's very stringent quality standards, that those displays, to try and get the cost down, they were, just taking perhaps too many quality losses there. And then in more recent months, we've seen reports of Apple talking to more traditional display providers about lower resolution micro OLED displays. So instead of being near 4K, they might be 2.5K, like Big Screen Beyond, or near 3K. And those display providers being, LG and Samsung, the classics. Even then, though, say you get like a 2.5K micro OLED, that still might not let Apple, when you consider all of the components they're putting into this thing, plus the fact that Apple, as a company, their fundamental business strategy is to make a hardware margin, not sell at cost. I don't think that lets them get down to the kind of MacBook Air, iPad Pro pricing that they really want this thing to be at eventually. But there was another very interesting report. All of these reports coming from South Korean news outlets that are well in touch with the supply chain there, LG and Samsung, saying that JDI, Japan's display company, pitched Apple a regular OLED display, not micro OLED. So it's OLED, not OLED on silicon, OLED on glass, that would have such high density that it would actually approach the density of micro OLED. So you could argue about the terminology of whether you call that micro OLED, but it's what makes micro OLED different from regular OLED is that it's on silicon rather than on glass. But this display would then allow you to have something that is close to the same density as micro OLED, or at least the least dense micro OLEDs, right? But at a much lower cost because it's still using this traditional and much less expensive manufacturing process. If they could pull that off, then maybe they could release something, a Vision headset that does still give you OLED, but isn't 2,000 or 3,000. It's actually much closer to the $1,000 or $1,200 or something like that. That is really what I think most of our commenters keep saying to us, and I think what a lot of people will agree is that magic spot that you want this thing at, because the value proposition of this thing is that it's a spatial iPad, it's a portable monitor, it's a portable cinema, and people clearly don't think that that's that's valuable enough at 3,500. Maybe they don't at 2,000. So the interesting part about that report is that it suggested that it would be at least kind of 2, 3, 4 years away from where that ultra high density regular OLED would be available. And it may be that that is what Apple has decided to wait for. And when they do release a Vision or a Vision Air or whatever they call it, they are going to come out really punching with something that is aggressively priced to actually move the market and not just be a slightly better improvement of Vision Pro's scale.
Just want to say thank you to all of our commenters out there. I think we'll have David make a pass through the comments here before we close off. I want to get him out of the studio as soon as possible so he can take care of his health and feel better. Francisco, for the common folk, Orion is substantially more impressive than the Vision Pro. Remember that a lot of investors have normie level technology knowledge and investment, and a lot of the time it's all speculation. And I think that's a lot of useful comments there. Hit that like button before you go out and then listen to David here. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for the amazing comments and for tuning in with us.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate on that Orion thing that you're absolutely correct. It is true to say that Orion is substantially more impressive to the average person looking at it. The basic take is, whoa, they're doing it in glasses and Apple's doing it in a big bulky headset. The problem is you can't buy Orion. It's not a product. They're not going to make it. There's not going to be a product like Orion until realistically 2030 and beyond. And so when it comes to reality, not just impressions, it doesn't matter how good Orion is. You can't get it in a product where meanwhile, Vision Pro exists. It's a product that Apple is not only selling, but making a healthy margin on, right? They're actually making a profit. They're not selling this thing at loss. And we're going to get, better and better versions. I do think that the M5 Vision Pro will probably have improvements beyond just computing power, right? Because if you have a better chipset and presumably you get an R2 as well, right? A improved version of the coprocessor, you can do higher resolution, better pass through, more computer vision stuff. Like you could do maybe upper body tracking and maybe even lower body tracking. You could kind of bring in the real world augmentation in better ways. Vision Pro can do static object tracking. Maybe Vision Pro 2 can do dynamic object tracking. I do think we are going to be surprised by what just increasing the chip brings, because that's the component change. But the question is, what's the capability change of having what may be like a 2 or 3 times improvement in GPU, and maybe like a much, much, much more dramatic improvement in the NPU. You're going to be able to do a lot more machine learning and computer vision on that thing.
Yeah, we saw that Meta rolled out a store concept today for very focused around the glasses. It seems like it's all about glasses in their store concept that they uh, rolled out. In fact, the only mention I saw in the blog post that they put out about Meta's new stores was the accidental nod to the Quest 3 because there's three arches on the front entrance of their store idea, which was, I think that's a good little thing to comment on, people talking about the overall market directions out there and wondering what Meta is doing in the long term. And then Davin pointing out that Apple has a lot of people trying the Apple Vision Pro for free in stores. I do go get that demo if you've got an Apple store within driving distance. Go check it out and put that headset on so you can compare it to your Quest, compare what's possible in a VR headset of that price. There was one other comment here I wanted to talk about before we finished. Yeah, just I really appreciated all the comments there. Do hit that like button. Thank you, Mindweaver. That's what it was. We had a report just out there right before we came to the studio on Alien Rogue Incursion being delayed on Quest. I saw someone call it out in the comments. We'll get into that more on Gamescast with Don Hopper on Tuesdays. But I like calling out our wins. I call out the wins that David is so good at on reporting stuff that we don't have anywhere else. You'll see that in our hands-on for Alien Rogue Incursion, I sort of hinted that it looked like this was a possibility that might happen. So we had that weeks before anybody else to kind of warn you that that was going to, very look likely from reading the tea leaves. So just wanted to call that out that we had that at uploadvr.com, and thank you to everyone who is noticing our hard work.
Yeah, we do have Metro Awakening is out today, though. If you're, lamenting that you're not going to get Alien this year, go and read Don Hopper's review of Metro Awakening, the giant VR title that is dropping on Quest, I think, 45 minutes ago. So if you are interested in that, go and check out our review.
All right. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next Thursday. Hopefully David is not still sick next Thursday for VR download. We're going to need to send him some get well cards if that's the case. But we'll be back here at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time on Thursdays with VR download. And then tune into VR Gamescast, hit that like button on some of our other episodes, and share this out to other people who are getting into VR for the first time. We'll see you in the future.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks again. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for the high quality comments.